Welcome back to Artcraft Electronics. The TYTMD380 portable digital two-way radio has been wildly popular. Many people purchase these and say they just want to get on DMR. They want to know what's going on and be part of this wave. They buy the MD380, bring it home, and then realize that there's a lot to be done to get these up and working the way they should be on DMR. This video is going to include a basic unboxing, charging, and preparation for programming, as well as installation of a code plug, firmware, and even the MD380 tools, which will then enable us to install a CSV file that includes the entire database of DMR users around the world. A very neat thing. Let's get started with the basic unboxing. Here we go. User's manual. I know. We'll just put that off to the side. Verification that this is a real TYTDMR radio, MD380. And we get down to the actual radio. Nicely sealed. And there's the radio. Brand new. Nicely looking. Put that off to the side. Next thing in reach is, of course, the battery. Must have a battery. Got two little clips right here. Those two little extensions go right into those two little holes, and then you can simply clip it into place. When you get your spare battery, and you'll probably want one, you install it. Got a little sign there that says push, and when you push it, it loosens the top connection, and you just lift the battery out. Let's put it back in again. There you go. Now the battery, brand new battery, is connected. I'm particularly fond of this antenna that comes with the TYTMD380. It's about 6-7 inches long, which in my mind is about a quarter wave at UHF. This is a UHF radio, by the way. There are TYTMD380s which are VHF, and this isn't that one. Okay. Next item out of the box is a belt clip. The belt clip actually screws to the battery. Never thought that was a brilliant idea. I could have put it up here, and I think that is what is done on the MD390. But nonetheless, what happens is whenever you change your battery, you have to unscrew and screw on your belt clip, or have multiple belt clips. Maybe it's a vast conspiracy to sell lots of belt clips. For now, we'll just put it off to the side. All neat. Comes with software. Good thing if you really get to a point where you need to go, you can't find software online, here it is. That'll get you going. Something very nice that comes with, many people include with, myself included. Here at Artcraft Electronics, we do include the programming cables. Good to have. Programming these radios from the front panel, stock, I think maybe next to impossible. It may be impossible as I think of it, because I think it's the MD380 tools that gives you the capability of programming from the front panel, but I'll go back and check that. I'm not positive. Nonetheless, it's a heck of a lot easier to hook your radio up to your computer, to download code plugs, to download firmware, and generally manage your radio. That's part of what needs to be done. It can be so confusing to new users. We'll put this off to the side. It'll be very important later. Here's a wonderful piece. It's the charger. Okay, input 12.5 volts. Remember that. That's a good thing to remember, because you could conceivably make up a little adapter and plug it into your cigar lighter on your car and provide power to your charger. Say you were going to be away for an extended period of time and you wanted to charge this using this device in your vehicle. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I've carried on a lot about that whip antenna, but it does come, the MD380 does come with a second antenna. And this one is a little stubby antenna, not a lot of flex there. So if you got a little, muffin top, this is probably going to stick you in the side of the muffin. So sometimes it can be more comfortable to have this long thing going for you. Okay, back to the charger. We have the little wall wart that provides the 12.5 or so volts for the charger, and the obvious end plugs into the charger itself, and then this conveniently placed power receptacle over here will allow me to plug it in, and the green light turns on. A really important thing to do at this time is to turn the radio on. The reason I say this is because sometimes, very rarely, they don't work out of the box. There's a problem with them. Let's take a quick look. Yeah, it's making all the right noises, and it turned on, and it is working. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to put the radio, brand new radio, brand new charger. Things are going to be a little stiff. And then this light goes red and tells us all about how it's charging at this time. Well, we have a little time to wait. So what I'm going to do is I'll go on to the next phase after the battery is charged. And now, through the magic of time lapse and editing, we find that the battery is charged. A word on the charging of batteries, though. The first time you charge it overnight, and subsequently use the battery down. Use it down to 1 bar. Now, I'm not saying run the battery down dead. That's a bad idea. But use it down to 1 bar and then charge it on back up. And that'll maintain the use of the battery, maintain the muscle that's behind your radio. Now, there's some argument whether the batteries themselves will develop a memory or not, but I found that the batteries last longer if you use that process. Next step in the process for us is going to be programming, putting a code plug into the TYTMD380. Welcome back to Artcraft Electronics. In this phase, we will load the code plug, which defines what channels, what frequencies you're going to be operating on in our radio. First, though, we have to wonder, what did this radio come programmed to do? When we powered up the radio right out of the box, it shows channel 1, zone 1. Not a heck of a lot of information there. We're going to have to hook it up to the computer via the customer programming software in order to understand what's already programmed into the radio, and more importantly, to program a code plug appropriate for your given area. Well, at this point in time, remember that cable I was so fond of in the first section? We're going to hook that cable up. We've turned the radio off. We're going to hook that cable up to the radio. But now what? We don't have our customer programming software installed in our computer. Or at least if you are a new purchaser, you don't have the customer programming software installed in your computer. The latest customer programming software resource that I have found is the VA3XPR site. That's www.va3xpr.net/programming-software-firmware/. Bringing that site up, we see programming software and firmware. As we get down the list, we see various DMR radios. Connect Systems, for instance, makes wonderful DMR radios. Baofeng DM5R. And what we are looking for, TYT, Tytera, MD380 and 390, as well as a few other models which are basically the same as the 380 and 390. Going down the list of available CPS, the 1.36 is for the MD390, the 1.34 is for the MD390, and here we have 1.32.0. Tytera MD380 CPS version 1.32. That's what you're looking for. You download that particular package, that customer programming software for the MD380, and you install it in your computer. I have already done this, so I don't have to. What we're going to do, though, is when you're through installing the CPS, you're going to open it, and it's going to look like this. Here's the CPS. Right now, we need to connect our radio. Remember that cable? Yes, we're going to use it now. It's connected between the USB port and the MD380, and you just heard it connecting to the computer, that little tone. We're going to read the code plug that's in the radio. We did want to know what channel 1 zone 1 was. So let's do that. Let's go to zone information. Well, this is pretty easy. There's only one zone. And there's channel 1. Let's look on the channel list. And there it is. We find it's a digital channel, 12.5 kilohertz. Channel 1 is its name. It's on 451.525 receive and 451.525 transmit. So it's a simplex frequency. Admit criteria is always, but color code is typically what we're going to be using if we're getting into a repeater, but always is fine for a simplex channel. Contact name needs to be defined, group list needs to be defined, color code, repeater slot need to be defined. Well, that's great, except I really don't have any communications need for 451.525 megahertz. Just not useful to me. What I need is a code plug that's appropriate for my area. Northern Colorado is my area, so we're going to select a file, a code plug, that's appropriate for my area. And since I have done a few of these, I know that this one will give me exactly what I'm looking for.
I've loaded it in. It says, well, it even says my DMR ID. It provides an interesting collection of zones. Now these code plugs you can typically get from other hams in your area that have been on DMR. The MD380 is such a popular radio that it's likely you'll be able to find someone to contribute a code plug to your effort. When you get that code plug, you'll have to change the radio ID. It'll probably say 12345, which doesn't do you a heck of a lot of good. You need to get a DMR ID and you need to put it in where it says radio ID. And then you probably want to put your radio name in as who you are. And then you'll have the code plug in the computer. The next step, since our radio is still connected, we'll just write this code plug into the radio. And now it's writing the data into the radio. Really, it's quite simple, but learning this straight out of the chute, if you just bought an MD380 and you're bringing it home, you're trying to put it on the air, even to test it, I mean, who are you going to find on 451? Anyway, we've written to the MD380, and now I'm going to turn the radio off and disconnect the radio, and we're going to look, turn it back on. Alright.
Kilo Bravo 3, India Juliet, Foxtrot, Landover, Maryland, shall be clear.
Well, we had some traffic on Fort Collins worldwide. Okay, we're going to get down to zones. And what you probably didn't see from the zone information is we have a home zone. So that's where we'll go. Click, click, zone, home, and now we're home selected, and we see FOCO local, Fort Collins local, and we go to the next one and we have FOCO NOCO, which is a very popular channel. So we've loaded a code plug and everything seems to be working perfectly.
Welcome back to Artcraft Electronics. In the last chapter, we loaded a code plug which contains channel information and a number of different parameters to allow your MD380 to actually work, to get on the air, to do what you wanted to do in the first place. That's kind of neat. But right now, we don't really know. I mean, we just came on board with this thing. We bought an MD380 and we said, oh, we're just going to get on DMR. But what is DMR? Operationally, what do we do? We're at a point right now where we've got all the technical stuff done, but we don't really know how to operate. Let me go over this in some not great detail, but enough to get you going. Let's take the radio out of the way for the moment. And once again, here's the VA3XPR site, and thank you. That provided some very interesting and useful information, the CPS and even the firmware. And later on we'll be talking about this experimental firmware, which will give us the MD380 tools. But first, let's get back to operations. How does DMR really work? We've all heard about the digital radio being excellent. It's either there or it's not, with a very small area between being there and not being there where there's significant distortion. But that doesn't happen a heck of a lot. Once again, you're either there or you're not. But how does it work? How does this code plug that we have set up work? Well, let's go into an example. The code plug that we currently have installed on channel 1, we have Fort Collins repeater set up, and it's just Fort Collins local. It's the number 2 talk group, which is the Fort Collins repeater local, and we have named it on the radio, for the sake of brevity, Foco Local, or Foco Loco as it is sometimes commonly referred. So if we're on channel 1, we're really only talking in the Fort Collins area. The coverage of the Fort Collins repeater is the coverage we have. But if we put our radio on channel 2, all of a sudden we're activating Fort Collins, Timnath, and Golden. So we have a much greater coverage area. Well, there we go. We have someone coming up on DMR right there. And I'm going to turn the radio off now so we don't get in the middle of a conversation. We were on channel 2. 3171 is its contact number, and it's Northern Colorado. We call it Foco Noco. Fort Collins, Timnath, Golden, maybe a couple of others. Some of these are persistent in that you key up on Fort Collins and all the rest of them key up, and some of them have to be activated. If I happen to be over in the Timnath area, I may not automatically hear Fort Collins. I may have to key up the Timnath repeater on 3171, my channel 2, and then it will activate Fort Collins, Timnath, Golden. So that's just the technicalities of a channel setup. Then my channel 3 here on this code plug would be talk group 3, North America, and we call it Foco North America. Well, I didn't list all of the repeaters because I really couldn't. There are so many that it probably would fill this up. It doesn't stop there. What happens though, it didn't stop there, and the reason it didn't stop there is because there are more and more circles. There are more and more talk groups. So you could have Fort Collins local, you could have Northern Colorado, you could have North America, you would have Fort Collins access point, and then you would be going worldwide. And North America, many different geographic areas. And let's get into those geographic areas just for an example. Right here, we have regional talk groups. 3177 is the mountain, 3176 southwest, midwest, etc., etc. All of these are accessible through repeaters which are set up to support them. Sounds like a lot of double talk, doesn't it? But not all repeaters are set up to support all talk groups. So we're kind of lucky here. We have the capability of getting on many regional talk groups, and other areas come on and they have 3177, or in our local case 3171, Northern Colorado, and they'll dial in. So every once in a while somebody driving from, say Austin to Dallas might come up on 3171 and say hi to us. So that's how the channels work on DMR. That's how we operate. So let's go back to it. If I wanted to contact my friend Jim and kind of knew that he was listening, I probably wouldn't activate Northern Colorado because Jim only lives a couple of doors away from me. So I'd activate the local repeater on channel 1. I'd give Jim a call. If he wasn't there, he might be out and about roaming.
If he wasn't there, I'd go over to my channel 2, which is Foco Noco, and that's just the name I gave it, and see if he was in the Fort Collins, Timnath, or Golden area and give him a call there. Failing that, and I knew he was on someplace, I might fire up all of North America and give that a try. You now have a good overview of how DMR works, and you're ready to go out and make your first contacts with your MD380.
Welcome back to Artcraft Electronics. In this chapter, we will review the MD380 tools. The MD380 tools is a suite of customizations that make operating more efficient, effective, and fun. The first MD380 tool that you can install in your TYTMD380 is the Roger Beep tone. Some people would prefer to have a lower tone as opposed to the high beep that occurs when you get a talk permit or when you transmit. That's a good one. Boot options enables or disables the boot screen at startup. Date format. Well, the date format allows you to change the order of the month, day, and year, which is okay, but I carry about 4 items that'll tell me the month, day, year, time, whatever. But I don't carry 4 items, and this is another option, that will provide a display of the last station that was heard, where the date would normally be. That's an interesting one, and that's one that I use. Number 4, the user CSV selection enables the ability to load a complete database of all registered DMR users worldwide. This enables the display of the call sign, the full name, and location of the registered DMR user being received. That's great for me. I forget names, places, and calls all the time, and this would be the solution to that. USB logging capability enables output on the USB port of received station information and other radio data. That might be interesting if you were using your MD380 in sort of a base station configuration. The promiscuous mode. It enables monitoring of all talk groups on a selected time slot, regardless of whether they're programmed into your radio. And with another MD380 tool enabled that I'll describe later, you can respond on a talk group that isn't even programmed into your MD380. That's a terrific thing to have. What if you wanted to lend your MD380, it's possible, to a friend, say you were at a Hamfest or something, but you didn't want them to use your DMR ID, you wanted them to use their own. Well, MD380 Tools number 7 will allow you to do that. You can do that from the keypad itself. Now, many people wonder whether their transmit audio is working for them, whether it's loud enough, whether it's right, whether it's too soft, too loud, whatever. Well, MD380 tool number 8 is the microphone bar graph, and it provides the transmit audio level visual graph, so you can see while you're talking, whether you're speaking loudly enough or too loudly. The experimental mode enables unstable or otherwise less developed features. This is a little ambiguous because, well, it's intentional. Features are added all the time to MD380 tools. In fact, this description of MD380 tools changes over time, so keep up on that. Keep your research going on the internet. Some people don't like to have the high-low power on the bottom button and the scan button up on top. They would prefer to have other functions. Well, MD380 tool number 10 allows you to reprogram those button selections, what they do, make them into hot buttons, and you can change them right from the keypad. That's a neat thing. Now, it's entirely possible that with all this capability, you could royally mess up your MD380 and not even know where you were in all these configurations. Well, MD380 tool number 11 is going to fix all that, because it allows you to reset all programmed or enabled configurations related to MD380 tools. The ultimate do-over. Well, if you're interested in battery conservation and having your battery last as long as possible on a given charge, you're probably going to want your backlight to shut down or at least diminish when you're not using your radio. Number 12, MD380 tool allows you to do that. So that's a good thing. Make your battery last as long as possible. Mine runs about 2 days when in normal operation and monitoring when I do that. COPL override. That one changes during the boot up how information is displayed. Number 14, dev only. Now this one sounds like experimental, but it's pretty well fixed, and it enables console style information screens, and it's controllable via the keypad hotkeys. Well, what's all that mean? That means that if someone is coming in on a talk group and I've got promiscuous mode selected, I can just go over and select number 3 on the keypad, and it'll copy the received talk group to the current transmit talk group, and you can speak right to that person even if you're not programmed in your radio on that talk group. So and considering the number of talk groups that there possibly could be, and there are, it's quite nice to be able to do that. And that persists until a channel or zone is changed. Well, or until you hit the hotkey number 5 on the keypad, and that'll clear the syslog screen as well. Number 6, send the syslog to the USB port. Once again, this is one of those things you're sort of using your MD380 as a base, and it'll enable display on your computer screen of what's going on. Okay, another do-over is hotkey number 7. Well, at that point in time, it just puts you hit number 7, and it'll put you back to the normal screen that you'd have otherwise. 8, 9, and pound are all information displays for monitoring net traffic. That goes on and sort of all in the background, but you might be interested in looking at that and seeing what's going on in your radio. Well, this has been a quick overview of the MD380 tools, and I think these are one of the most valuable expansions of operating capability imaginable. To be able to receive a signal and see all the data on the transmitting station's information that is registered in the DMR database is quite a nice thing. I really, that's my favorite. So next time I will describe how the MD380 tools get installed in your TYT MD380. Welcome back to Artcraft Electronics. In the previous chapter, we saw all the features and functionality that is provided by MD380 tools. And I think it's well worth installing the MD380 tools in your TYT MD380. Well, in order to do that, we're going to need to update the firmware. And going through our favorite site, the VA3XPR site, we find down under TYT Tytera MD380, we're going to find the firmware upgrade tool with upgrade instructions, and there is the upgrade tool itself. Now it's important to mention at this time that we are actually upgrading the firmware that makes your radio work. Read the instructions, look at them, understand them. You can break your radio big time if you don't do this correctly. If you're partway through a firmware upgrade and you turn your radio off, it's going to put it in some unknown state which may render it completely inoperable. Bad thing. So pay attention to the upgrade instructions. And Artcraft, well, we're just not responsible if you blow your radio up when you do this kind of stuff. There is a risk involved, and I guess that's as legalese as I get. Well, once you have the firmware upgrade tool input to your computer and loaded, you're going to want to go down and get the latest and greatest experimental firmware. And here it is, and that's what you would pull down from the VA3. VA3, was it? No. See, now this is why the MD380 tools is important. Yes, it was VA3 XPR site. So that's where to get the information. If you have a non-GPS MD380, make sure you get the non-GPS firmware, or make sure you're getting the right firmware overall. What happens when you've downloaded the tools and the firmware? The process is boot it up. Here's the upgrade firmware. Then go find the upgrade file, select the right one. Here's firmware 222-2017, but it's got the GPS. And here, the radio that we've been working on is no GPS.bin. Well, that would be the right one to open up and put into our MD380, since we don't have a GPS. Now, the push buttons need to be selected correctly on your MD380 in order to actually get it to receive the firmware upgrade. What you do, and let me turn on a little bit more light so we can see this better. What you do is you have that button, which is the transmit button, and then the top button, which I have programmed to turn on the scan normally. But what we do is we wind up holding both of those down and then turning on the radio, and you get the flashing green, red, green, red. That doesn't mean stop, go, stop, go. What it means is you are ready, the radio is ready to receive the new firmware. Now, naturally, you would have your cable connected from your radio to your USB port, but since I wanted to save some time in this video, I've already downloaded the firmware and it's all done, so we're in good shape there. This radio has been infused with MD380 tools, the firmware load that will enable you to do that. It's called experimental firmware, but it's pretty solid. I haven't seen too many problems with it, and I would recommend having it. We turn our radio that is now set up with MD380 tools, and we can go into the menu, utilities, and there is MD380 tools. We select that. There's the Roger beep that we spoke about in last chapter, boot options, date format. Remember that one. You can get the information from the last station that transmitted to show on your screen. That's great. Timed out. See, that's what happens. You snooze, you lose. 380 tools. user CSV, USB logging, promiscuous mode, DMR ID edit, mic bar graph, experimental, side button control, configuration reset, the ultimate do-over, backlight control, COPL override, development only, 2 exclamation points. And there you go. Well, MD380 tools have now been installed, and we're ready to go on to the next phase, which is installation of that CSV file, which will provide all of the DMR operators, registered DMR users in the world, get put into your TYTMD380. That'll be the last one in the series, so hang in there. Welcome back to the final chapter in the MD380 series. In this part, we install the user CSV files that enable our MD380 to operate in a manner where it displays any user that we hear, displays their call, their name, and their location as registered in the DMR database anywhere in the world. Now, I had a little bit of a difficult time on Windows because the CSV file installation required setting up Linux in a VMware environment or a virtual PC environment. It made more sense to me to actually use a Linux box to do that job. And I had a Raspberry Pi, and there were images around to do this job. So another benefactor in the efforts to make the MD380 the highest performance device it can be is Kilo Bravo 5 Romeo Alpha Bravo. His site provided a image that I was able to flash onto a memory to put in the Raspberry Pi and create the image that you see before you. The neat thing about this particular image is it does more than just put in the CSV file. As we go through, and it updates the MD380 tools to the latest version of the MD380 tools. That's kind of nice. That happened right there. Also, it loads the firmware. So this is sort of a complete package. This is a little redundant to what we did in Windows, but it's a nice thing to have here. The most important part for us right now is to flash the user database into the radio. Now, I have connected the radio to the Raspberry Pi USB port, so we're all set up and ready to load the user database into it. And now it says just hit enter and we'll start this little circus going. And it did. And this is extraordinarily easy. It does it at command line, but there's a script to do it, so there's no issue at all. Now, off it goes. It's just running happily. It's going to all the sources of DMR registration information, and it's accumulating and updating. So once that's all done, it creates a preliminary file, and then it updates all of the information. It creates one kind of file and then inputs it to another sort of file, the user.bin file. All details you don't need because the script runs this all by itself. And now it's done. The update is complete, and we just need to close the window. Bada bing, and it's done. We now have MD380 tools with the CSV loaded into our MD380. And there we go. I'm putting it up there at the moment. And what I'm going to do is back off a little bit because I need some RF space between me and this radio, and you're going to see some information that comes up on the screen. Okay. And there it is. W0BA testing. We just saw my call come up and my information on this screen right before us. This MD380 has been upgraded and loaded to the latest firmware, the latest CSV file with data from amateurs around the world who use DMR, and you've got an excellent utility to manage your radio and enjoy your radio. It's important at this time to explore what we've done. We have unboxed our radio. We've charged the battery. We've loaded a code plug. We've installed MD380 tools. All of that was done in a Windows environment and worked very well. We went over to a Linux environment and we uploaded the worldwide CSV file to our radio, and now we have a very complete package. It's a wonderful thing, and it's really technology, so much power in your hand and for a very economical price. The MD380 in this fashion, if you were just a casual operator, if you're just someone who wants to get on and use the features and functionality, you don't want to jump through the technology and computer hoops, then I suggest you contact www.artcraftelectronics.com, and you can purchase one of these TYTMD380s completely loaded, as it is right now. Your only job, once you get it in hand, is going to be putting your personal information into the MD380. I'd be the first one to admit they cost a little more totally loaded and prepared, but, well, you be the judge of whether it's worth it or not to you. If it isn't, there's lots of people that sell these very inexpensively, and Artcraft Electronics prices are competitive with the market. So you make the call. Do you want to do all this, or do you want to buy one that it's pre-done? You make the call. So that's the end of the series at this point. I've enjoyed presenting this series to you. It's helped me learn a lot about the MD380. You've probably been able to sense along the way that I wasn't exactly an expert on this. Well, I feel pretty competent now. Thank you for watching. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have too. Till next time, from Artcraft Electronics.